Hey everyone, it's Josh. A couple of my subscribers have been asking me to make more sort of cooking and food videos because I talk a lot about how my health and how I've lost 100 pounds in the last year and how I'm on this good diet and all that. And people want some cooking tips. Now, I am by no means an expert cook. All right, like I can't even cook like a turkey like for Thanksgiving in the oven properly. I mean, I'm just not a great cook, but I do know some things. So I will share the advice that I do have. Like in my last a couple videos I believe I taught you guys a salt trick with as far as with hard-boiled eggs. People cook hard-boiled eggs and they get frustrated at the peeling process because peeling them without like ripping the entire egg apart can be a task. And so I showed you guys that if you pour a bunch of salt into the water when you're cooking the eggs, like when you heat up the water for about 3 minutes and then pour a bunch of salt in there. Don't overload it, but pepper your eggs and water pretty good with salt. And then let the eggs cook for the rest of the time you're going to cook them 10, 15 minutes, however long you cook them. And when it comes time to peel those eggs, whether you eat them the next day or whenever you eat them, it's going to be a lot easier because the salt weakens the shells. It softens up the shells so that when you crack the eggs, when you crack the hard-boiled eggs, it just comes off a lot easier. So today's cooking advice, given the very very limited knowledge I have about cooking, is about rice. Now, my diet as a man who doesn't have a lot of money but is still living a preservative-free lifestyle basically revolves around rice. Rice accounts for over half of my caloric intake every single day. And the reason for that is because rice is one of the few cheap things that I can buy that I don't have to get sick of. Because rice goes with every kind of spice and flavoring you can think of. So I can pour garlic on it one day, act like I'm having, garlic bread. The next day I might put lemon pepper seasoning on it, have a completely different taste. The next day I might pour some chili spice on it to feel like I'm having a chili meal. You know what I'm saying? Rice goes with everything. The rice goes with all the hundreds of spices that are out there. And most of those spices are healthy for you. So rice is something you can buy cheap, and it has no flavor of its own. It has whatever flavor that you put into it with whatever spices you want to use. So you can feel like you're having a different meal every single day for 6 months if you want to with rice. And so it's a perfect way for me to get a lot of calories, get the carbs I need, and eat healthy. Um, Now, the rest of my dietary intake for the day is usually beans, fruit like grapes or blueberries or something, uh, and I mix in a few teaspoons of honey in with that too. Some pure dark chocolate and honey. I usually mix that up, which makes a very tasty yet healthy treat. Just make sure if you're going to buy dark chocolate bars, you get the 100% pure dark chocolate. You don't get anything that's 95%. Don't get anything with any processed sugar in it. Just get the pure dark chocolate bars. Anyway, back to the rice. My advice for cooking rice is simply this: do not use rice cookers. Actually, just cook your rice. I was using rice cookers for like the first like 6, 7, 8 months a year. In the last 3 or 4 months, I've learned to actually cook my rice. Let me tell you something. Your rice comes out so much better when you cook it on the stove than when you put it in a rice cooker. It comes up so much softer, fluffier. The texture is so much better. It's a lot easier to eat. It's a lot easier for your body to digest. I mean, so rice cookers are really, you shouldn't be using a rice cooker on a regular basis. Rice cookers should be used. Let's say you're visiting family in some town far away and you're staying in a motel, and the hotel doesn't have a stove or an oven. That's where a rice cooker comes in. But if you're eating rice on a regular basis, Just cook it on the stove. It's so much. The taste is so much better. Not that rice even has a taste, but you know what I mean. Like the texture's better and everything like that. And it's easy. It's just as easy to cook rice on a stove as it is in a rice cooker. All you do with cooking rice on a stove, okay, is you you put the rice in, you pour the water in. I usually let the rice soak overnight to soften it up, but I did that with the rice cooker too. But even if you don't do that, it doesn't matter. Just pour your rice in, pour the water in. General rule is 2 cups of water for every 1 cup of rice. So if you're cooking, say, 2 cups of rice, you put 4 cups of water in, right? Turn your oven on high, or not your oven, but your stove, whatever stove part you're going to use, and wait till it comes to a decent boil. Now it doesn't have to be like a full boil, but wait till it starts boiling and there's a pretty decent boil going. Once the boil's going, once you've got a decent boil going, like towards the center of the pot or wherever the boil's going to be, turn it down to simmer and just let it sit on simmer for 20 minutes. And after that, your rice is done. That's all you got to do. So it's just as easy as using a rice cooker. There's no stirring. There's nothing complicated about it. It's just as easy as it would be if you would use a rice cooker. Yet it comes out so much better, tasting so much better, easier to digest, just better texture, the whole thing. So, yeah, that's my cooking advice for the day. Since somebody asked me to make a cooking and food, specifically a food video. Again, you can use rice cookers if you're away from home for a while. You're in a motel for a few days because you're visiting somebody. That's fine. But if you're going to be at home, a lot of people just use rice cookers if they eat rice every day because they have this false belief that it's easier than cooking it on the stove. It's not. It's the same darn process. All you got to do is make sure that you are there after that 20 minutes of simmering is done. It's not hard to figure out, 20 minutes. Just look at the clock and then come get your rice 20 minutes later, right? So let's reiterate. Cook rice on the stove instead of the rice cooker. Pour your water in, whatever you're going to do. Turn the oven on high or the stove on high. Wait for the rice to come to a boil. Depending on how much rice you have, this is usually right around 3 minutes, although it could be longer if you have more rice and more water to work with. But it's usually right around 3 minutes unless you're cooking like a ton of rice. Once it comes to a boil, put the cover on for your pot, and then turn the stove down to simmer and let it simmer for 20 minutes with the pot on top of it, or with the pot cover on top of it. After 20 minutes, your rice is done and it will be perfectly cooked. Like, you will have no complaints. So I guess I'm myth busting today. This idea that cooking in a rice cooker is easier than cooking on a stove. It's not. Just cook your rice on the stove and you'll have a better meal because of it. So that's all for today.